The day my son sent me to prison was the day I learned that betrayal does not always come from strangers. Sometimes it wears the face you once kissed goodnight. I am Daniel Hartwell, and for most of my life, I believed I had done everything a father was supposed to do. I built a business with my own hands, long nights, ruined weekends, and a body that never quite recovered from the stress. I provided a home that never knew hunger, paid for private schools, tutors, and opportunities my parents could never imagine. I raised my children to believe that integrity mattered more than money. At least, I thought I did. My son Nathan was my pride. Intelligent, ambitious, charming in a way that made people trust him quickly. When he introduced me to his partner, Lila, I welcomed her without hesitation. She was soft-spoken, elegant, and always seemed slightly fragile, the kind of woman who made men want to protect her. I saw how Nathan looked at her, like she was the center of his world, and I told myself this was what happiness looked like. Everything began to change the day I discovered irregularities in the company accounts. Numbers did not lie, and I had spent decades reading them like a second language. Large transfers hidden under vague descriptions, shell expenses that led nowhere. When I confronted Nathan privately, I expected denial, maybe embarrassment. What I saw instead was fear, sharp and fleeting, quickly buried under anger. "You do not trust me," he said. "After everything I have done for this company." I told him trust did not replace accountability. That was the last calm conversation we ever had. 2 days later, I received a call that would shatter my life. Lila had fallen down the staircase at the office building. She was pregnant, they said. She had lost the baby. Nathan was hysterical. His voice cracked as he told me she claimed I had pushed her. The accusation was so absurd, I laughed at first. Then the police arrived. The trial moved faster than I thought possible. Evidence appeared neatly packaged, each piece cutting deeper than the last. Security footage showed me arguing with Lila near the stairs. The critical minutes were missing due to a camera malfunction. Witnesses remembered raised voices. No one remembered her slipping. Nathan took the stand, eyes red, voice trembling. He told the court he loved his father, but justice had to come before blood. Lila sat in a wheelchair, hands folded over an empty space. Tears sliding down her face with practiced precision. I searched their faces for hesitation. I found none. When the verdict was read, the room felt distant, like I was underwater. Guilty. The word echoed in my skull long after the judge stopped speaking. I turned toward Nathan instinctively, expecting something. Anything. Regret. Doubt. Humanity. He did not meet my eyes. Instead, he wrapped an arm around Lila, shielding her from the cameras like a devoted husband. That was the moment I understood. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a decision. Within days, my accounts were frozen. An emergency petition declared me mentally unstable, unfit to manage my own affairs. The company I built was placed under temporary control, with Nathan named acting head for continuity. My lawyers withdrew one by one when retainers stopped clearing. I was left with a public defender who advised me to accept a plea deal for leniency. I refused. Innocence was the last thing I owned. The night before I was transferred, I lay awake replaying every conversation, every warning sign I had ignored. I thought of my other child, Evelyn, my daughter, distant since her mother passed away. She did not attend the trial. She did not call. The silence hurt almost as much as the sentence. As the cell door closed behind me for the first time, the sound was not loud, but it was final. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal and felt something inside me harden. Not anger, not hatred, something quieter and far more dangerous. Patience. I did not know how long it would take or what form it would take, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. My son had not just taken my freedom, he had declared war, and wars are never truly over when only one side believes they have already won. Prison does not break you all at once. It erodes you slowly, the way water wears down stone, not with force, but with time. They took my name on the first day, gave me a number instead. They took my clothes, my watch, the wedding ring I had worn for over 30 years. They took my sense of time and replaced it with a schedule that did not care whether I was innocent or guilty. Lights on. Count. Food. Lockdown. Count again. Days blended together until the only proof I was still alive was the ache in my joints and the rage that refused to die. The cell smelled of damp concrete and old sweat. At night, the walls breathed heat, trapping it until sleep became impossible. I learned to lie perfectly still, listening to distant shouts, metal doors slamming, men crying when they thought no one could hear. I did not cry, not because I was strong, but because I refused to give that place the satisfaction. My cellmate was a man named Robert Hale, old enough to remember a world without cameras and credit scores. He had been inside for years on a financial crime he claimed was nothing more than refusing to take the fall for someone richer. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. "Your family will be your hardest sentence," he told me one night, staring at the ceiling. "Prison ends. Betrayal does not." The first months were the worst. Letters stopped coming. Calls were unanswered. I learned that my assets had been locked under claims of cognitive decline. Medical evaluations I had never attended declared me unfit. Signatures appeared on documents I had never seen. Nathan had moved fast, faster than grief, faster than decency. The public defender visited once every few weeks, always rushed, always tired. He spoke of appeals in theory, but never in action. Without money, innocence was a concept, not a defense. I began to understand that the system did not seek truth, it sought closure. I marked time by scratching lines into the wall near my bunk, one for each day. The numbers grew until the wall ran out of space. I moved lower, then higher. It became my ritual, my proof that time was still moving forward even if my life was not. I watched men around me lose themselves. Some became violent, some became numb. A few clung to religion like a life raft. I chose observation. I listened. I learned. I remembered every detail of my own case, replaying it like a chessboard, the missing footage, the timeline that never made sense, the way Lila's injuries did not match the fall they described. Small things, overlooked things. At night, when the noise finally settled, my thoughts returned to Evelyn. My daughter had always been quiet, analytical, more like her mother than me. She worked in a field that valued precision and patience. If anyone noticed inconsistencies, it would be her. The thought both comforted and tortured me. I had no proof she was helping, only the faint hope that she had not truly abandoned me. One evening, Robert leaned closer and lowered his voice. "If you ever get out," he said, "do not rush. People who rush make mistakes. Let them think you are finished." That advice stayed with me. As the months turned into a year, something inside me changed. The anger cooled, hardened into focus. I stopped asking why this happened and started asking how it was done. Betrayal required planning. Lies required coordination. That meant there were records, trails, cracks. By the time my release date appeared on the schedule board, I was no longer counting the days with desperation. I was counting them with intent. 2 years buried alive had not made me weak. They had made me patient. And patience, I was beginning to understand, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The notice came during morning count. I was told I had visitors. Plural. That alone was unusual. I already knew who it would be. The visitation room was colder than the cell block, air-conditioned to the point of discomfort. A thick glass panel divided the space. Phones hanging on each side like lifelines that never quite reached far enough. I sat down slowly, feeling the familiar stiffness in my knees, and waited. Nathan entered first. He was dressed carefully, not expensive enough to look arrogant, not cheap enough to look guilty. The suit fit him well. Power always did. Behind him walked Lila, thinner than before, her hand resting protectively on her stomach out of habit rather than necessity. She avoided looking at me until the last possible moment. Then she did, and her eyes were already wet. "Father," she whispered, as if the word still meant something. I picked up the phone but did not speak. Nathan did not waste time. He never had. "Dad," he said, leaning forward, lowering his voice as if privacy still existed between us. "Tomorrow you walk out. We want that to be the beginning of healing. But there are some things we need to settle first." He slid a folder toward the glass, tapping it with 2 fingers. "Trust administration. A temporary transfer. Just a formality. The markets have been unstable. We need liquidity to protect what is left." "What is left of what you took," I said quietly. His jaw tightened. This is not the time for bitterness. Lila leaned closer, her voice trembling. "We kept everything running while you were gone. We protected your legacy. The least you can do is help us now." The least I could do. The words echoed inside me. Before I could respond, the door opened again. Evelyn walked in. She looked nothing like her brother. Where Nathan was polished, she was precise. Dark suit, hair pulled back. No jewelry. Her expression was unreadable. She took the seat beside Nathan without acknowledging him, then finally met my eyes. "Father." That single word nearly broke me. Nathan exhaled in relief. "Tell him, Eve. Tell him this is for the best." She did not look at him. "The company is exposed," she said evenly. "Cash flow is tight. If you sign, the damage can be contained." I searched her face for warmth. Found none. "So this is it," I said. "All of you in agreement." A pause. Just long enough to notice. Nathan pushed the folder closer. "We need your biometric confirmation tomorrow. In person. 1 signature. After that, you can rest. We will take care of everything." "You always were good at taking care of things," I said. "Especially when I'm not around." Lila's eyes flashed with irritation before she masked it. "Please do not do this. Holding on to anger will only hurt you." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You should be careful what you assume I am holding on to." Nathan's smile hardened. "If you refuse, Dad, you will walk out with nothing. No access, no authority, no place in the company. We have moved on." I nodded slowly. "Good. Then there is nothing left to discuss." I hung up the phone and stood. Behind the glass, Nathan's expression shifted from confidence to unease. Lila mouthed something I could not hear. Evelyn remained still. As I turned to leave, I looked back at my daughter. For the briefest moment, her eyes flicked downward, just enough to notice the slight tremor in her hand as she adjusted her sleeve. A signal, or a farewell. I could not tell which. That night, back in my cell, I scratched the final line into the wall. Tomorrow, the door would open. They believed they had already won. They were wrong. Because the most dangerous move in any game is the one your opponent never sees coming. Freedom did not feel the way I had imagined it would. The gates opened with a slow, mechanical groan, sunlight spilling across the concrete like something holy. For a moment, I simply stood there, squinting, my eyes aching from years of artificial light. 2 years of my life reduced to a plastic bag holding worn clothes and paperwork stamped with dates that no longer mattered. Outside, a small crowd waited. Cameras, microphones, faces eager for a story they could package and sell. At the center of it all stood Nathan and Lila, positioned carefully so the lenses would catch them first. Nathan wore concern like a tailored jacket. Lila clutched a bouquet of pale flowers, her posture delicate, almost fragile. They looked like forgiveness incarnate. "Dad," Nathan called out, loud enough for every microphone to hear. "You are safe now. We are here." I stepped forward, my shoes scraping against the pavement. These were the same shoes I had worn the day they took me away. No one had offered replacements. No one had offered apologies either. Nathan moved closer, extending the flowers. "Let us go home. We can talk privately. Start over. Home." I walked past him. Not around him. Past him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A reporter shouted my name. Lila's breath hitched, her expression cracking just enough for the cameras to catch it. Nathan reached out and grabbed my arm. "Do not embarrass us," he hissed. "Get in the car." I stopped and turned slowly, my gaze dropping to his hand, then back to his face. "Let go of me," I said calmly. "Or I will tell everyone here exactly how you sent an innocent man to prison." His fingers released me instantly. Before he could speak again, a low rumble cut through the noise. A black sedan pulled up, polished to a mirror shine, its presence commanding immediate silence. The driver stepped out first, young, composed, dressed in a dark suit that spoke of confidence rather than wealth. He opened the rear door and waited. "Daniel Hartwell," he said, offering his hand. "I am Marcus Vale, your attorney." Nathan froze. That name meant nothing to the crowd, but it meant everything to him. I saw it in his eyes. Confusion, alarm, calculation failing in real time. I shook Marcus's hand once and stepped toward the car. Before getting in, I turned back. Nathan and Lila stood rooted to the ground, their rehearsed narrative collapsing without a single word from me. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I simply left. The car door closed with a solid final sound, sealing off the chaos outside. Inside, the air smelled clean, leather, and quiet. Marcus pulled away smoothly, the prison shrinking in the rear window. "You kept them waiting," he said evenly. "I wanted them to see me walk away." He nodded. "Everything is prepared. We have limited time, but enough." "Where did you come from?" I asked. He met my eyes in the mirror. "Someone who believes you should never have been there." We drove in silence for several minutes. The city blurred past without a name, streets I recognized, but no longer belonged to. When we stopped, the building rose above us, glass and stone, understated luxury. The elevator carried us upward without sound. The suite was expansive, sunlight pouring through tall windows. I stood still, absorbing the space, the freedom to move without permission. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from release. Marcus placed a folder on the table. "You were declared mentally unfit under emergency provisions. Those have been challenged and suspended. Your voting rights remain intact, majority intact. I closed my eyes briefly. There is more, he continued. Someone has been gathering information. Quietly. Thoroughly. They asked me to represent you the moment your release was confirmed. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of financial statements, timelines, communications I had never seen. Not everything, just enough to understand the scope of the deception. Who is the source? I asked. Marcus hesitated. They asked to remain unnamed. For now. A familiar cold clarity settled over me. I thought of Evelyn, of her stillness behind the glass, of the tremor in her hand. Outside, my phone vibrated for the first time in 2 years. A new device. A single message. You are not alone. Trust the process. No signature. I exhaled slowly. They think today was about freedom, I said. They think the gates opening was the end. Marcus met my gaze. It was the beginning. I walked toward the window, looking out over a city that had taken everything from me and offered nothing back. Good, I said quietly. Then let us begin the part they never planned for. Because the war did not start when I walked out of prison. It started the moment they believed I never would. The truth does not announce itself. It waits in silence, patient, watching while lies grow careless. That evening, Marcus returned with someone else. She was older than I expected, her hair cut short, streaked with silver, her posture rigid with discipline rather than age. She did not waste time with pleasantries. She placed a leather folder on the table and studied me with eyes that had seen men lie under oath and crumble without remorse. My name is Helen Crow, she said. I do not take many cases anymore. Yours is an exception. Why? I asked. Because what was done to you required coordination, money, and arrogance, she replied. And people like that always leave fingerprints. We sat together as the city darkened beyond the glass. Page by page, the story rewrote itself. Not with emotion, but with facts. Shell accounts hidden beneath consulting fees. Payments routed through third parties timed perfectly around key legal decisions. Emails written carefully, but not carefully enough. Someone had been watching for a long time. Someone inside the family, I said quietly. Helen did not deny it. The plan moved quickly after that. Emergency motions filed. Financial access restricted. Control measures activated before Nathan could react. We did not announce anything. We let the system do what it did best when properly guided. Freeze first. Explain later. My phone rang just after midnight, a number I knew by heart. Dad, Nathan said, his voice tight. There is a problem. Cards are not working. Accounts are inaccessible. This has to be a mistake. I said nothing. Dad, answer me. You taught me once, I finally said, that if you want to understand a situation, you follow the money. Consider this an exercise. I ended the call. Within hours, the first public cracks appeared. A scheduled deal postponed. A board inquiry requested. Partners asking questions that had never been asked before. Nathan's power depended on momentum. We had taken that away. Helen slid another document across the table. Medical records. Time stamped. Certified. I read them once. Then again. The dates did not align with the story that had put me behind bars. She never lost the pregnancy the day she fell, Helen said. It happened earlier. Privately. Quietly. The incident that convicted you was staged to support a narrative already prepared. My hands clenched into fists. 2 years of my life traded for convenience. There is more, Marcus said. The technician responsible for the missing footage was paid through a subcontractor linked to Lila. We have statements, digital trails. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of it settle. Rage surged, but beneath it was something colder. Certainty. Who gathered this? I asked again. Helen hesitated, then spoke carefully. Someone who pretended to be loyal to your son. Someone who attended meetings, signed documents, watched him lie. Someone who waited. I thought of Evelyn again, of her silence, of her absence from the trial, of the way she never once asked me to forgive her. Execute everything, I said. No warnings. No mercy. Marcus nodded. Notifications went out. Locks engaged. Authority restored. Across the city, Nathan would be waking up to a world that no longer answered to him. I stood by the window as dawn approached, watching light creep across the skyline. They thought I had been buried for 2 years. They never realized that while they slept comfortably in my house, the shadows had been working for me. And shadows, once they move, do not retreat quietly. Power rarely disappears in private. It falls where everyone can see it. Nathan chose the worst possible place to feel it slip through his fingers. He was hosting a private dinner that evening, one of those carefully curated gatherings meant to reassure investors and silence rumors before they grew teeth. The room was elegant, the lighting warm, the table heavy with confidence and expensive wine. Nathan sat at the center, relaxed, smiling, playing the role he had perfected. The future leader, the steady hand. Lila sat beside him, her posture tense, fingers tightening around her glass whenever a phone buzzed on the table. When the bill arrived, Nathan barely glanced at it. He reached for his card with practiced ease, the gesture of a man who had never questioned access. The machine beeped, declined. He frowned, laughed softly, and handed it back. Try again. Sometimes these systems glitch. The second beep was louder. Final. A quiet ripple passed through the table. Nathan's smile stiffened. He offered an apology, motioned to Lila. She handed over her card, eyes darting toward him. Declined. The waiter hesitated, embarrassment written across his face. I am sorry, sir. It says the account is restricted. Restricted. That single word carried more weight than any accusation. Conversations around the table slowed, then stopped entirely. Nathan excused himself, moving toward the side of the room, phone already pressed to his ear. I was told later that his voice rose with every unanswered question. Finance department unreachable. Legal counsel unavailable. Notifications piling up faster than he could read them. Across the room, screens flickered to life. Breaking news. A familiar face appeared. I stood behind a podium, calm, composed, every line of my face earned. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse. I stated facts. During my wrongful incarceration, significant financial irregularities occurred, I said. Effective immediately, all operations are under review. Full cooperation is expected. Nathan turned as if struck. Around him, people stared. Some recognized me. Others recognized the implications. The company he claimed to lead no longer belonged to him. By morning, the narrative had shifted completely. Articles questioned the conviction that had put me away. Analysts dissected transactions that no longer made sense. Former allies distanced themselves. Silence replaced loyalty. Then the final blow landed. Medical documentation surfaced online, verified, time-stamped, irrefutable. The pregnancy had ended days before the incident that destroyed my life. Public sympathy flipped in a matter of hours. Outrage followed, not toward me, but toward the couple who had sold a tragedy that never existed. Nathan watched it unfold alone, his phone vibrating without pause, messages demanding explanations he could not give. Lila tried to speak, to defend, to reframe the truth. He did not listen, because in that moment, surrounded by evidence and eyes that no longer admired him, Nathan understood something too late. This was not a misunderstanding. This was exposure, and exposure does not destroy you slowly. It takes everything at once. The collapse did not end with headlines. It ended in a room where lies could no longer hide behind titles. The board convened at first light. No press. No statements. Just a long table, sealed doors, and faces that had once applauded Nathan without question. I sat at the head, silent, letting the weight of authority return naturally. Marcus stood behind me. Helen took a seat to my right, her presence alone enough to still the room. Nathan arrived late. His suit was wrinkled, his confidence gone. He tried to speak, but the words fell apart before they reached the table. He demanded procedure. He demanded loyalty. He demanded time. Time was the one thing he no longer had. Before I could speak, the door opened again. Evelyn walked in. She wore white, not as a statement of purity, but as a declaration of finality. She did not look at her brother as she crossed the room. She placed a slim portfolio on the table and took her seat without asking permission. Nathan's face lit with relief that lasted exactly 1 second. "Eve, thank God. Tell them this is madness." She opened the portfolio. "For 2 years," Evelyn said evenly, "I documented every decision made under emergency authority, every transfer, every payment, every instruction sent from Nathan to third parties." She looked up then, meeting his eyes for the first time. "I did it because someone had to choose truth over convenience." She slid the documents forward. There were emails Nathan had written assuming privacy, contracts tied to shell entities, payments routed to individuals who should never have been involved, messages coordinating timelines that matched court dates and evidence gaps with chilling precision. Nathan stood, chair scraping loudly. "You betrayed me." Evelyn's voice did not rise. "You betrayed our father." The room was silent except for Nathan's breathing. He turned to me, desperation finally breaking through the arrogance. "Dad, I made mistakes. I was pressured. I thought I was protecting what you built." "You protected yourself," I said, "and you did it by destroying me." Helen spoke then, calm and final. "The vote is simple. Removal for cause. Referral for criminal prosecution." Hands rose around the table, one by one, including Evelyn's, unanimous. Nathan sagged back into his chair. Security entered quietly, professional, unemotional. As they took his arms, Nathan looked at Evelyn again. "You let me think you were on my side." She swallowed, her composure cracking just enough to reveal the cost of what she had done. "I let you believe what you needed to believe so you would keep talking." They let him out without resistance. When the doors closed, the room exhaled. I turned to my daughter. "You carried this alone for 2 years." She nodded. "I had to. If he suspected me, he would have destroyed the evidence, or me." I reached for her hand. "You saved my life." She looked down at our hands, then back up at me. "You taught me that loyalty means standing up when it hurts the most." In that moment, I understood the full measure of what I had lost and what I had been given in return. One child chose greed and power. The other chose sacrifice and truth. And only one of those choices would survive what came next. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. No shouting, no drama. Just the slow weight of consequence settling into place. Nathan sat at the defense table in a plain suit that did not quite fit him anymore. His shoulders were hunched, his hands clasped tightly, as if he could still hold on to something if he tried hard enough. Lila sat several seats away, no longer reaching for him, no longer pretending they were united. Whatever bond they once shared had been built on lies, and lies do not survive exposure. When the verdict was read, I did not feel triumph. I felt release. Guilty. The word landed with finality, not just legally, but morally. Years of manipulation, theft, perjury, and conspiracy collapsed into that single sound. Nathan did not look at me when the sentence was announced. He stared at the table, jaw clenched, as if still negotiating with a reality that had already moved on. Lila wept quietly. Real tears this time. Too late. As they were led away, Nathan finally turned. Our eyes met for the last time. There was something in his expression then. Not anger, not hatred, but a hollow recognition. He understood that this was not something I had done to him. This was the result of choices he had made long before any courtroom existed. Outside, the air felt different, lighter, as if the world had been holding its breath for 2 years and finally exhaled. Evelyn stood beside me, her hand resting lightly on my arm. She had barely slept in weeks, carrying the final weight of what she had set in motion. I pulled her into an embrace, not as a businessman or a man reclaiming power, but as a father who finally understood the depth of his daughter's courage. "You never left me," I said quietly. She shook her head. I just had to disappear for a while. Months later, I visited Nathan once. The room was small, gray, unforgiving. He looked older than I remembered, stripped of the confidence that once defined him. He spoke first, his voice low. "I know I do not deserve forgiveness. I did not argue." I slid a single document across the table. He read it slowly, his hands trembling as he reached the final line. "Evelyn Hartwell, sole controlling authority. You are giving her everything," he whispered. "I already did," I replied, "long before today." He looked up, panic breaking through. "And me." "You chose your path," I said evenly. "This is where it ends." I stood before he could say anything else. I did not need an apology. I needed distance. When I walked out, the door closed behind me with a sound that felt familiar, but no longer frightening. It was over. Today, I live quietly. I no longer chase growth for the sake of pride. I watch my daughter lead with integrity and strength, shaping something better than what I built. I have learned that legacy is not about what you leave behind, but who you trust to carry it forward. I lost a son not because of prison or courts, but because he chose greed over loyalty. I gained something far more rare, a child who was willing to be misunderstood, even hated, to protect the truth. That is not betrayal. That is love. This story taught me that family is not defined by blood alone, but by character revealed under pressure. Greed will always disguise itself as necessity. Betrayal often wears the mask of ambition. And loyalty, true loyalty, is usually quiet, patient, and deeply costly. My personal belief is simple. It is better to lose someone who chooses wrong than to lose yourself by excusing it. Integrity may isolate you for a time, but it will never abandon you in the end. If you are listening to this and facing betrayal, remember this: silence can be strategy, patience can be power, and truth, no matter how long it is buried, always finds a way back to the light. This is not just my story. It is a warning and a reminder. Choose loyalty over greed. Choose character over convenience. Because when everything else is stripped away, those choices are all that remain.